Thrilled to have Jeremy Andrus with us today. I think you've read his bio that's available to you. I'm going to give you a little bit more of it. Jeremy is the president and CEO of Traeger Wood Fire Grills. He joined them in 2014 and acquired the business with Trilantic Capital Partners. And Jeremy, you'll talk about some of the others, right, in July of that year. Prior to that, he was the president and CEO of Skull Candy, where he helped grow the annual sales from less than $1 million to $300 million in annual revenue. Early in his career, he was the director of strategic planning and acquisitions for Kimpton Hotel and Restaurants Group and a consultant with Monitor Company. Jeremy received his MBA from Harvard Business School and his BA from Brigham Young University. He lives in Salt Lake City with his wife, Kristen, and their 6 children. Would you please welcome Jeremy Andrus?
Thanks. What's up, guys? How's everyone doing? This is like early for college students still, right? A little bit. Not when you have 6 kids that start waking up at 4:30 in the morning. Fun to be here. I always love doing this. It feels like yesterday for me that I was sitting in your seat. And this is slightly loud. How's that? Perfect. And I will tell you, the reason why I love to do this is that I would not have imagined when I was sitting in that seat, and it wasn't that long ago, the bio makes it sound like it's longer than it was, that I had no idea where my career was going. And so I can tell you the adventure that you're about to have is insane. If anyone thinks they've got it figured out, you're in a way better place than I was. You're wearing Skull Candy headphones, aren't you? I like it. The aviators. Yes, they still wear them. That's good. I've been gone for 5 years now. I'm going to tell you a little about my story. And I will tell you that this sense of adventure that I think is so important to have in a career actually makes it fun. And if you get a little bit too impatient and a little bit too ambitious and you feel the weight of whatever it is you're doing, you just don't do it as well. And I really think careers are meant to be enjoyed. So I'm going to tell a little bit of a story on how I got started, and then I'm going to turn up the music a little bit and put a Traeger Grills video on it, make you all hungry before lunch. But let me tell you about what happened in my life almost 13 years ago. So this is when you guys were, sucking your thumbs still. But 13 years ago, I got in my Ford Explorer. I left my furniture, my college furniture in my apartment in San Francisco, and I started to drive east on the 80. And I was coming to work with a guy that I'd met. I was in Park City for the weekend, snowboarding, met the founder of Skull Candy. So it was, at the time, it was doing about $500,000. We weren't a headphone company yet. We were integrating audio and mobile phone capabilities into snowboard helmets. We became a headphone company over time. 3 guys, $500,000-$600,000 in sales. I'm driving towards Park City where my parents lived, and so I had a basement to crash in. It was like the 3rd time since I graduated from college that I moved into mom and dad's basement. There's no shame in that. And I showed up to build a business. And I remember the day I showed up, this tiny office that was about half the size of this stage. And I said to Rick, who was my co-founder, Rick, where's my office? And he said, well, we don't exactly have an office for you, but there's a closet over here. If you want to clean that up, pull the crap out, that can be your office. I said, oh, that's interesting. I'd been to Harvard Business School. I just moved from San Francisco, where I had a beautiful office in the financial district, and suddenly my office is a closet. But unfortunately, there was no desk, and there was no chair, and there was no laptop. And I said, Rick, where do I get my stuff that I'm going to work with? And his response is, dude, go to Staples. It's out to 224. pick up whatever you want, and we'll help you set it up. He said, great. Is there a company credit card that I can take with me? And he said, no. I said, okay. So I take my own credit card, and I put about $1,500 on it, which was subsequently reimbursed 2 years later. It took 2 years for the company to have enough money to pay back the debts that I put together that day. It was an adventure. Being an entrepreneur is an adventure. How many here think they want to be an entrepreneur? Okay, that's 2/3 of you. And I saw a little bit of this. Maybe you're flipping your pencil. Maybe not. And so day number 2, I show up to the office. I'm ready to go. I'm excited to be an entrepreneur. I get there at 7:30 in the morning. Nobody's there. 8 o'clock, nobody's there. 8:30, 9, 9:30. And suddenly I'm starting to question if the company that I work for is still in business on my second day. So I call Rick and I say, Rick, where are you? He said, dude, look outside. There's 6 inches of fresh powder. I said, okay, what does that mean? He's like, we're on the mountain. He's like, no wonder we have financial issues. So I went, I got my stuff, and I skied with the team. Day number 4, Thursday morning, Rick walks into my office, and he's scratching his head, and he kind of puts his head down and says, we got a problem. And I said, what is it? How can I help? So, of course, at this point, I'm 4 days in. We can solve any problem. He said, we're out of money. I said, oh, that would have been nice to have known a week ago when I quit my job. I had $120,000 of business school debt, and I owed $700 every month for 30 years. That would have paid off. And I realized I've joined a business that does not have $10,000 in the bank. And so fortunately, in my prior role at Kimpton Hotels, I was able to save about $40,000. And I said, Rick, how much do we need? And he said, $30,000. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I don't want to fail on day 4. I really don't want to put all of my money into a business that I'm still bullish on it, but at this point I'm not sure. But I can't pack up and go home on day 4. So I put $30,000 in the company. I got my first paycheck again about 2 years later, and it turns out that $30,000 was worth a lot more than I put into it. But being an entrepreneur is a wild ride, and it's right for some people. If you like adventure, if you are willing to not always control your destiny, but believe you have great capability to build something, it's really cool. You don't succeed every time. I can tell you about businesses that I started that you have never heard of. And so there's an element of quantity, and there's an element of luck mixed with this element of entrepreneurship and great capability. If you're not great, it's hard to succeed. But no one's great when they start. You leave with a hunger to build something. So I'm going to talk about just a couple things. Skull Candy was an amazing adventure. We built it to $300 million, took it public, sold in 80 countries around the world. And again, did I expect that would happen? No. Rick and I were going to build a $10 million company and sell it for $20 million. And I was going to pay off my business school debt and my Subaru. And that would have been a big deal. Left, bought another business called Traeger Grills. How many here have heard of Traeger? Wow, that's impressive. Hands down. How many had heard of Traeger 5 years ago? 2 hands. So, unbelievable brand building exercise. We bought the business about 4 years ago, and this thing is lighting the world on fire, the world of outdoor cooking. Excuse the pun. So let's watch a quick video, and then I want to tell you how we built it. It's way better with music.
Are you ready?
Thank you, Cal.
Are you ready?
Awesome. So, who's hungry now? Ready for lunch? Yeah, I'm starving. Okay, I want you to think about the answer to this question. What is the most important thing a growing business needs to succeed? You don't have to answer it, but you can if you want. Who thinks they can identify the most important thing it takes for a business to succeed? Yeah, go ahead. Why is a good product important? Okay, so what does good mean? Thank you. You have to be differentiated. If you are selling what everyone else sells, you're dead. You compete on price. That's a terrible place to be. What else? Go ahead.
I think good employees.
Okay.
If you have employees that aren't passionate about your product, it's not going to be able to advance in the way you hope.
So team is super important. If you don't have a great team, you may have a highly differentiated product and a poor team, you're not going to win. What else? There's a whole, go ahead. I see the hand halfway up.
I know, I'm just shy sometimes.
Don't be shy with me.
I just say you need clearly defined goals.
Okay? You need a strategy. So you have product, you have team, you have a strategy, and part of the strategy defines, it's a vision. What are we trying to get done? And what's the strategy for getting it done? These are three of the most important elements of business. Of course, you need financing. But by the way, you have these three things, so easy to raise money these days. Now, if you have two of these three things, it gets hard. You have one, it's really hard to raise money. But if you have those four things, you can win. And so I want to talk about an element of building team that I think is really, really important. It's very different than the product piece. You have to be differentiated. You have to have a strategy. But if you can build a team and a culture, most importantly, a culture that motivates people to be great, you'll win. And so you can think about this from two perspectives. One perspective is, as a manager of people, when you're hiring, finding cultural attributes that make them successful is important. As someone who's coming out of your undergrad, your juniors, seniors, you're going to be walking into environments looking for your first job, by far more important, in my opinion, than product or strategy is fitting in with the culture of the business. And you feel it. There's no real way to define what that means or to quantify what it is. When you walk into a culture and you can tell they value people and they invest in people and you feel inspired by what they're doing and you feel good and you feel energy, that's a place you want to be. That was not the place that I joined at Traeger. When we bought this business, it was a total and utter train wreck. No one wanted to build. People would come late. They would leave early. They didn't want to share data because it was risky and dangerous. As a CEO, it was hard for me to even get people to collaborate with me. There was no strategy in the business, but strategy can be fixed. The solution was highly differentiated, but it was bad product. You can fix that. The business was underfunded. You can fix that. What I realized, the biggest challenge in this business is that the culture was broken. The culture was toxic. People were mean-spirited. People refused to work across different silos. And what happens is, it doesn't necessarily mean the business dies, but it means the business can't grow. And so when you go into a startup culture, when you start a company, you can define what your cultural values are. And you can hire people that really fit that mold. And the reality is that, if you think back to when you were 3 or 4 or 5 years old, your mindset's not that different now. You're kind of the same person. You know a lot more, you have more skills, more knowledge, you have more experience and more pattern recognition. You articulate things differently, but you're kind of the same person in terms of how you view the world, how you interact with people. If you're shy 20 years ago, you're shy today. People tend to not change that much. And so when you're building a business, you can define who you want as opposed to bringing people in and asking them to change. Great cultures are made up of people that share your values before you bring them in. So what I found in this business, in this 30-year-old business, was a culture of toxicity, and I did not know how to fix it. So there was a moment in time. This picture represents the lowest moment in my career. As you can probably see, that is an 18-wheel rig that has been doused with fuel and melted to the ground. That was an incident of arson that happened at Traeger Grills 3 years and a week ago. And I know that because I get on this Time Hop social media app, and a week ago, this picture popped up, and I took it just after that truck, just after the flames subsided in that truck. So what happened? This will demonstrate how toxic this culture was. Who here has taken an operations class, supply chain operations? Okay, one of the most important things that you have to figure out how to do in operations is scale a business. You want to be able to grow, but you also want to be able to contract and have an infrastructure that allows you to do that cost effectively. At Traeger, we owned warehouses, we owned racking and shelving in the warehouse, we owned forklifts, we had 18-wheel rigs, we had drivers on payroll, and this is like a very 1980s supply chain. Very difficult to scale, because if the business doesn't grow and you've got this massive fixed footprint, your economics are terrible. If you grow too much, what happens when you have no room left in the warehouse? And that happened to us. We had stacks and stacks of containers, steel containers from China, just stacked up outside of the warehouse. We had nowhere to put them. And so we decided that if we were going to grow this business, one of the investments that we had to make was in a supply chain that was scalable. So we stood in front of the warehouse team, and we explained this to them. And we said, whenever you're letting jobs go, you have to do it incredibly respectfully, because these are people and their families. But the reality is that businesses have to make hard decisions sometimes. So we stood in front of the warehouse team and we said, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. We're not doing it for 8 weeks. So in the interim, bless you. In the interim, if you need to go and look for a job on company time, no problem. We'll pay you while you're gone. By the way, anyone that wants to work for UPS across town, we're willing to, they are willing to hire all of you. That was going to be our new outsourced supply chain partner. And if we get to the end of 8 weeks and you haven't found a job, we will give you a generous severance check. So it felt like we were doing all of the right things for the people. We knew that it wasn't perfect. It's never changes, always uncomfortable. But we also knew strategically we had to do it. Well, the next time I drove into the office at about 7:30 on a Wednesday morning, this truck was on fire. The warehouse crew didn't like it. And so there were a few of them that melted this thing to the ground. In that moment, I decided we had a toxic culture that I could not fix. I was 10 months into this business. I was doing everything I could to fix this culture, and people were not playing ball. And I will tell you, I huddled in a room. I'd hired a bunch of executives from Skull Candy, and we're kind of looking at each other trying to figure out what our plan was. And as we're sitting there, we get some news that a UPS facility in Atlanta, who had let some people go the prior day, had someone come in and shoot and kill 3 people. And we're in this very toxic culture, and someone opens the door to the office as he's walking by, someone from the office, and says something like, "We hear something big is going down today, just so you know." And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't remember reading a Harvard Business School case that talks about what you do when people are burning your trucks down and when you feel unsafe in your office. Very uncomfortable feeling. So I go into the bathroom, and I wash my hands. I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm thinking, what in the crap are you doing here? I do it because it's fun, and it was no longer fun. It was very uncomfortable. And so I decided in that moment, number one, I had to step up and be a leader. If I looked scared, if I couldn't create a plan, nobody was going to. And the second thing I realized, if I couldn't rebuild the culture, we weren't going to succeed as a business. This had gone too far. And so in that moment, I decided we were going to shut down the office. There was almost 30 years of history there. There were second generation Traeger employees, but we had to shut it down and start over. I lived in Utah. I commuted back and forth every other week. And I decided in that moment that we had to start over. And so what I did, as opposed to hiring people that burn things down, I created a set of values. This is what the cultural values of Traeger are. And they're really, really important. By the way, this started with this was a list of 30 different things. And when you're thinking about values, again, you can think about this in terms of who you hire, but you can also think about it in terms of what you hire into. You want to be part of an organization that inspires you to be great. Think back to the moments where you feel like you were highly satisfied with work that you were doing. And the chances are you were giving a lot. You gave a lot of energy, but you were also with people, whether it's a professor, it's a manager at work, whatever the organization is. Usually you did something that was hard, but you did it with a group of people that you respected, and they appreciated what you did. That's the type of environment that you should look for. And it was important for me to create a set of values that really helped us accomplish the vision of the business. We wanted to disrupt the market. We wanted to change the world of outdoor cooking. We wanted to bring something so unique and transformative to the market that we went from a small brand to dominating this big industry. And so these are the values that we created. And they all mean something different. I could go through each one of them, but the point is that every one of these values speaks to something that's important to the vision of the business. And so in great organizations, you don't micromanage people. Great people don't like to be micromanaged. They like to be given meaningful opportunities and meaningful tasks. And then they want to have access to resources, but then you want to go out and do something important without someone looking over your shoulder telling you how to do something. And so that's what cultural values do. Our first one, done, done, done. So done, done, done is about focusing on quality. And everyone says that, we deliver this great quality experience to our customers, but the only way to do that is to deliver quality to your team. When you hand off a project, you care about the details, and you check all of them, and it's high quality. This is actually a value that came from Under Armour. One of my mentors at Traeger built Under Armour, and he's a board member at Traeger. And he'll always ask you, if you hand him something, is this done, done, done? And usually you'd say, yeah, it's done. He said, no, is it done, done, done? And you realize that you don't hand anything to this guy that's not quality. Well, that's a value that you want everyone to have. I remember when I was having career, I was in a career transition, and I was looking at Traeger, and I said, hey, Wayne, I need some advice. I need to figure out if Traeger's the right thing for me. And he said, let's spend some time together. Why don't you come up to Lake Tahoe, Incline Village, bring your biking stuff, let's go mountain bike for a couple of days, and we'll talk through it. And I'll tell you what done, done, done means to Wayne. This guy's made hundreds of millions of dollars building a very successful brand. And he picks me up from the airport. But he doesn't just meet me curbside. He meets me outside of security, grabs my bag. We go to the car, and he tells me about the agenda that he's put together for the next couple of days, the itinerary. And we get in the car, and it's clear that this car is spotless inside and out. He went and he detailed the car because I was coming. He reaches in the back seat, and he pulls out a cooler. And he said, I brought your favorite protein bar. And I brought 3 of your favorite drinks. Take your pick. And we set out to have 2 of the greatest days. He was very thoughtful around this. And I don't think he's trying to teach me a lesson. Wayne lives by done, done, done. What does that mean in an organization? If people know that that's important, then they know how to behave. Cultural values really enforce behavior that's important in the organization. Stand in the fire. So standing in the fire is about risk-taking and innovation. As an entrepreneur, you have to take risk. If you don't take risk, you'll never build a business. But it's sort of interesting to watch risk-taking as businesses grow. The more you develop an asset that's valuable, the less risk you take. You start to say, we didn't have anything before and it was worth taking a risk. Now we've got something and we can't screw it up. Well, when you have this mentality that you can't screw it up and you can't take risks, that's when you stop innovating and that's when you stop growing. And so for us, being willing to stand in the fire and take risk is important. No one ever gets punished or belittled or demoted for failing to take risk or for taking risk and failing. That is something that we believe in deeply. We cook together. There are no individual heroes at Traeger. We win as a team, we collaborate, and we recognize people who play in that environment. Test kitchen mentality. What's the most important thing you should be thinking about when you think about your first job? It's this. This is finding an environment where people are willing to invest in you, where they're willing to develop you, and they actually care about your development as a person. And that's great alignment with an organization because when they care about your development, they develop you, you give so much more. Lastly, no reservations. We really believe in obsessing over customers and customer experience. I'll tell you a quick story about this one. Guy named Rob, he was a junior guy at Traeger. He's now in the MBA program east of us. Rob got a phone call on a Friday night. He was at his house. He just had a kid 8 weeks earlier, so he had a young baby at home. And it was a Costco employee at a warehouse in Seattle. Costco's an important customer of ours. And this guy says, Rob, and Rob's an analyst that spends his time behind spreadsheets. He said, Rob, I'm having a party tomorrow to watch the football game. My Traeger doesn't work. And Rob said, tell me what's wrong. And he describes it. Rob says, I know what's wrong. What does Rob do? Well, it would have been very easy on a Friday evening for Rob to say, let me see if I can find someone tomorrow morning who can help you. And he may not have found that on a Saturday morning. He could have said, I'm so sorry. I just had a baby. I can't help you. I'll have someone else call you. There are a whole bunch of things that Rob could have said that within the context of most businesses would have been okay. What does Rob do? Without calling anyone, he buys a plane ticket. The next morning, he gets on an airplane, first flight out to Seattle. He goes up there. He takes the piece. It's this steel auger, and you can imagine what TSA said when they saw this curly auger in his bag. Said, what is in there? He takes his auger up to Seattle. He fixes this guy's grill. He helps him prepare his brisket, gets the brisket going, and gets on an airplane and goes back. Doesn't tell anyone. Monday morning, this guy calls calls his warehouse manager, sees him, lets him know, who calls someone at Costco corporate, who calls our head of sales, who's in my office by about 11 o'clock that morning, telling me what Rob did. And I look out, Rob's just sitting at his desk doing his work. Rob knew that this is how we treat customers. He didn't ask permission to buy a plane ticket. He didn't hand it off. He chose to go and do it and fix it. And he didn't come back looking for high fives either. This is what cultural values do in an organization. They empower people to be great. And so when you're looking for an organization, look for that place that feels like it inspires you to do your best work, because when you do your best work, you are happiest by far. I talked about careers being an interesting journey. So these are the logos of places that I've worked since, well, I guess the upper left is where I did my undergrad. And there's a whole bunch of randomness. There's, by the way, the only logo that I expected to be on here was Monitor. I was a management consultant. and I had a strategy in mind. There was a reason I was a consultant. But it didn't go great. I remember being 90 days in to being a management consultant, and I picked up the phone. I was 90 days in. I'm living in Santa Monica. I wake up in the morning, and I'm just feeling depressed. I'm working 7 days a week. I hate my job. I hate what I'm doing. And I'm like 90 days in and planning to stay 2 or 3 years. And I call my dad and I say, Dad, maybe I should have gone to law school. Maybe I should have gone to medical school. I think I hate business. And we sort of talked through, and he said, all right, Jeremy, first of all, why don't you start by getting out of bed? You got to keep your feet moving. You know, you got to, like, don't pass judgment so quickly. You need to spend time. You're still fresh in your role. Take this as an opportunity to get out there and learn something. Even if you don't love it, learn from it. And that was a really important career lesson that I learned. It's something that I want you to think about. And by the way, it's really easy to share experiences. These are my experiences, and my adversity will be different than your adversity. Hopefully you don't have to deal with burning down trucks. But you'll have adversity in your career. I promise you that. And so I share a few experiences on my career because it really, it informed who I became. But a lot of this wasn't planned. And so I spent a couple years as a management consultant. After that, that is a bag of money. Those are British pounds, which I guess will be coming back soon. But I became a full-time day trader. I day traded stocks. And I'd wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to see how Tokyo and Hong Kong exchanges had done. And then the European markets are still open. New York's going to open in a few hours. And I became a day trader. And it was the most all-consuming, painful thing I'd ever done. It was fun for a while. It was very high energy. And this is in the late 90s where everything was going up. So I had a ton of margin. I was trading $1 million, $2 million a day of stock. It was mostly not my money. These are the days where you could borrow a lot of money. And then things turned around, and I started losing a lot of money. And I lost all of my money, plus $200,000. And you can imagine how that feels. It's the worst thing. I owned a lawn care business growing up, and I cut hundreds, probably thousands of lawns. And what I had when I went to college was $25,000. Well, that disappeared, plus all of the money that I'd saved, plus $200,000 of margin that I had lost and I owed. So it took me 7 or 8 years to figure out how to pay that back. And I decided that that was not my career path. As a consultant, I learned that I didn't like just being cerebral and building PowerPoint decks. As a day trader, I realized that I wasn't building anything. I was just getting in the middle of trades. And so you can see that there were actually really cool things about both of those experiences, but they were both far from right from a career perspective. And so when you think about where you're going in your career, one of the things that I think is most important is to recognize you don't know exactly what you're going to be good at or what you're going to love. So how do you figure it out? You do your best and you go try. And by trying these things, you gain experience. And every career opportunity, you get a little bit closer to what you think is right. There's no shame in trying something and saying, that's not who I want to be for the rest of my life. So I started building, I built a couple of limited service franchise Marriott hotels, a Residence Inn and a Courtyard in LA, and I loved it. It was a ton of fun. Going from building and owning nothing to seeing concrete and rebar and sticks coming out of the ground, it was amazing. And I learned that I was a builder. I wasn't an advisor, I wasn't a trader, I was a builder. But hotels were, but it was kind of slow. And I wanted to build, but I wanted something faster paced. So I went to Harvard Business School, and really my intent was to figure out what I wanted to do. I wanted to go back and learn I wanted to go back and build a network of people, and I wanted to figure out what was next. And so I did that. I was an investment banker at Lehman Brothers in the summer of Harvard Business School. Do you guys, does everyone know where Lehman Brothers went? Sad story, gone. Not my fault, because as a summer intern, I spent a ton of time, say this may sound fun, I was on the road around Europe every day looking at luxury hotels. And as fun as that may sound, it was a painful summer. So what I decided was, I believed I was going to be an investment banker, and 24 hours into my stint as a banker living in London, I decided I was not a banker. Now, I'm glad I tried it. I'm glad it wasn't a full-time job. I'm glad it was an internship. But there were things that I realized I liked and I was good at, and I kept refining. Igloo's Frozen Drinks. You've never heard of it. It's still around. It's about a $4 million business. I moved to Dallas, and I started this business with a friend of mine. He's actually one of my best friends growing up. He's my cousin. He was an investment banker, joined me in Dallas. And it was interesting. We owned forklifts. I was doing marketing. I was moving product. I was trying to raise money. And this is when I decided that I was an entrepreneur. I wanted a physical product. I wanted to be part of a fast-paced environment. And so a lot of learnings from the past were starting to come together. And I think the point is that there was something I learned about myself in every experience that taught me what I like and what I dislike. And so everything gave me something important. I didn't learn that because I spent a ton of time thinking about it. I did that too, but I learned because I went out and I did. And so you'll do that and you'll experiment. Igloo's went badly. My cousin, sadly, I got a call one day when I was in Southern California from our office manager and said, Cousin Brock has driven a company truck off a cliff, high on crack. He's in jail in some small town in Louisiana. Truck's impounded. And I said, okay, what do we do now? We're about to close on venture money. I say, where is he? And her response is, I don't know. I forgot. I was so upset. So I spent a day calling small jails in Louisiana. Brock is fine now after a lot of rehab, married, 3 beautiful children. But I realized the importance of partnership. You need good, stable, trustworthy partners. And Brock is one of my best friends again. He's on the phone on investments on the way up. But that was the wrong time for us to be partners. I loved what I was doing. I did not love the partnership. It was challenging. I want to fast forward a little bit. Skull Candy. Skull Candy was a lot like Igloo's Frozen Drinks. It just so happens that it was more successful. And why was it more successful? Because I got really, really lucky. I wish I knew how to control luck. There's an element of quantity in just trying. And sometimes if you're a good entrepreneur, it works out in the first time. And I know people, I know an incredible entrepreneur. He's now local to Utah County. He's on his 4th startup. First 3, not so much. That wasn't his fault, wrong space. His 4th one's on fire right now. And so if you want to be an entrepreneur, I think you realize that you do it because you love it. You don't do it because you want to make a ton of money. That's nice when it happens. You don't do it because you don't want to go get a job. You do it because the characteristics of a person that builds a business seem to fit who you are. Skull Candy was an amazing ride. Traeger has been 1,000 times better. Traeger is bigger than Skull Candy ever was, and we're still growing really fast. And I will tell you that from my first job at Monitor Company, where I called my dad feeling depressed, to what I do right now, and of course there's nothing that you do that you love everything. You don't love every task, you don't love every minute of the day, but I can tell you that I love going to Traeger. It's not an office, it's not a job, it's something that I do because I have so much passion for. And that is the best thing that can happen in your career. It's that you show up to a place that you really feel part of. You believe in the mission. You love what you do. You don't feel like it just pays the bills, but you feel like you're part of a good organization. Not everyone gets there. Most people in this country, they're hand to mouth. They need the paycheck. It pays the bills. They don't love what they do. I actually think that you can, although you need to manage your expectation that, if your career journey is anything like mine, you may not love it for a few years, but if you can enjoy the process of finding what you love, you will be so much happier as you get there. Here are just a few thoughts, and then I'd be glad to take 4 or 5 questions, 2 or 3 questions. I know at 12:19 I'm going to sit down. What did I learn in my career? 4 lessons. Number 1, take time to learn. If you're so impatiently waiting for the perfect job and you're so ambitious to get there, you're not going to learn much. If you can enjoy the process of learning, not only about the business that you're in, but if you can take the time to be introspective and to be smart around what you love and what you don't, and I'm a big believer, write it down, because when you write, you learn. Think about what are the qualities of what you're doing that you love? What do you hate? What are you good at? We tend to love what we're good at, and take the time to learn. Second, there really is no end point in a career. It truly is a proverbial journey. And I don't think I realized that until I became CEO of Skull Candy, and we took it public, and I thought that taking a company public, ringing the bell on the NASDAQ, that was like the pinnacle moment. And guess what? It came and it went, and then the next morning, I had a job to do. And I realized that I hadn't enjoyed my career as much because I got to this moment and there was just another mountain peak to climb. So if you can enjoy the journey early on, you are going to be happier than I was the first 10 years of my career. I truly believe in the circle of life and in mentoring. If you can find great mentors, your career will be that much better. And when you have the opportunity to be a great mentor, I really believe that's an important part of the ecosystem of entrepreneurship that we live in. I had a tough moment. I was CEO of Skull Candy. We were the highest shorted stock on the NASDAQ. Being number 1 in most things is fun. That was not one of them. All sorts of things were being written about me, about the company, some of them true, most of them not true. And it was a frustrating place to be. So I called this guy at Under Armour. I cold called him. Someone said, you should call this guy. I call him back in Baltimore, and he takes 45 minutes to talk to me on the phone. And he said, Wayne, if you're ever out this way, I would love to spend a couple hours with you. I just knew that he had all of the answers. Well, 2 weeks later, he said, I'm coming out west, going out to Incline Village in Tahoe. Do you want me to swing by Salt Lake? I said, please. I pick him up from the airport thinking that we're going to spend a couple of hours together, and we spend 2.5 days together. We go in my office, which was filled with whiteboards, and I just start outlining my problems. And we fill up the boards, we take pictures of them, we erase them, we start over. We did this for 2.5 days. This guy has become a really important mentor in my life. I don't think Traeger would have happened as successfully as it had were it not for Wayne, because there were some tough moments. Find a mentor, and then figure out how to be a mentor as you have something to share. Lastly, 3 years ago, 3 years and a week ago, I was dealing with burning down trucks, and I was questioning if I was safe, and Traeger was a disaster, and I didn't know where this business was going. And 3 years later, a week ago, we sold the company. And I never in my wildest dreams would have imagined it would have happened that fast. And so you're going to have adversity in your career. I promise you. If you care about your career, you're going to have adversity because careers are hard. but they're fun at the same time. And there's a perspective that I've learned looking back, which is in the hardest moments of my career, I was actually closer to success than I understood. I'm so glad on the day that the truck burned down that I didn't throw in the towel and quit. Now, I wanted to. I'd invested a ton of money to buy this company, and I'd hired people that needed jobs. And so for those two reasons, it was hard to quit. Fortunately, I couldn't, because I was committed to these people. Remember, your success is closer than the adversity would have you believe. I've got 3 minutes to take questions. How about 1 or 2 quick questions? And if you have none, then everyone gets to leave early. There we go.
What caused you to want to go to school, Candy? You said you met the founder in Park City. But
Yeah.
Said,
You know what?
job and go here.
It's a great question. The reality is that I was in an environment that didn't motivate me at all. I would look at my watch every 20 minutes thinking it had been an hour. I was bored. I didn't like the culture. I wasn't inspired by it. And I met this guy and he said, there's something here. And I just had this moment of thinking, we can build this and this can be fun. I was looking for adventure. I wanted something that was more satisfying. Yeah, go ahead.
How do you market a grill? It seems like something that would be strange to just like put out on display and start cooking. Is it more with your strategic sales? I don't know. Do you supply strategic stores that are doing all the selling for you?
You know, yes, and there are a whole bunch of touch points. So the one thing I can tell you about Traeger is that it is a life-changing product. And I tell you that not because I sell Traeger grills for a living, but that's what hundreds of people have told me. When I was actually looking to buy the business with this private equity fund, I remember going to Oregon, doing due diligence, and sitting with like the third customer and saying, tell me about your experience with Traeger. And I'm taking notes at the table, and this guy says, my Traeger changed my life. And I stopped taking notes, and I look up, and I said, what did you say? And I have now heard that hundreds and hundreds of times. Our biggest challenge is communicating what in the world a wood pellet grill is, because no one knows what it is. And so there are hundreds of touch points. We do it through brand ambassadors, through influencers. We align with shops. We give them free grills to turn on to start to smoke. If someone eats food off of a Traeger, they're hooked. So we want to get them to trial. And so this is a harder thing to sell because it's a disruptive technology. But when we can get someone to trial, we win. And all the consumer research says, if you own a Traeger and you own brand X, let's call it a Weber, which is a propane grill, 9 times out of 10, you're going to choose your Traeger. And so it's a magical product. I'm gonna wrap up because I love to be on time and just say it's a pleasure to be here. I wish you the best. Enjoy the journey. Careers are meant to be enjoyed. I hope you have awesome success in the process. Thank you so much.